All right, shalom everybody. Welcome to Translating Hebrew. This is week number 3, and the notes for this class, as usual, you can find at theregathering.com/page/PFT Hebrew 4. And if you're brand new to the whole Hebrew thing, go on YouTube to the Passion for Truth video channel, and you can go through learning the alphabet and vowels and the early stages of grammar in a series called, it's called Biblical Hebrew with Mark Jacob. Just scroll down through their playlist. They've got them all kind of lumped together. So anyway, check that out, and that'll get you up to speed to where we are present day, which is starting to actually translate a few Hebrew verses. So, on the right, I have a verse that is not the verse we're going to translate today. This is Deuteronomy 11, verse 1. I have this on here because I was looking at the verses we were going to translate today, that we rather are going to translate today, and I thought that we might get through those faster than I anticipated. So this is backup material, and I don't have any notes written out for that, or typed up for that, so I just have it up here just in case. The verses we're actually going to look at today are Deuteronomy chapter 6, verses 4 through 6. So if you can't access the notes online, but you happen to have a Hebrew text, that's where you can look. Yes. Lots of people do have this one memorized, even in Hebrew. So, before I start, though, I need to cover an aspect of speech that I have not gone over before. So I will do that now. I mentioned before that in the future tense there is it's not a tense, it's really properly called a mood, called the jussive. And the jussive is part of, the jussive is part of what's known as the volitional mood. So the jussive applies to the third person. We saw the jussive in Genesis 1 in the term yehi, all right? And what it means is, rather than being a strict statement of the future, okay, this is going to happen, it's a statement of desire or intent about the future. I want this to happen, or may this happen. So the jussive applies to the third person future tense, and the jussive is in many cases indistinguishable from the future. It has to be derived from context, although in the case of certain words like hayah, it actually has a separate form. Well, in the second person, that's when you're addressing someone else directly, there's also a volitional mood, and it is known as the imperative. It's imperative because you're expressing your desire directly to somebody else. In essence, you're telling somebody to do something. It's also known as the command form. Okay, so this is the imperative form, and it very closely resembles the second person future tense forms. So this is I'm just going to give it for the pa'al, although there is an imperative form in each of the binyanim. But I'm just going to go over the pa'al because that's what we're going to cover today. So in the masculine, the second person future tense singular looks like this. I probably don't have enough room to do all this, but I'll improvise. Okay, so this is our paradigm. It's on the Binyan Pa'al conjugation sheet in the future tense. So that's the future tense. To form the lights just went out. Okay, well, hopefully you can still see me. For some reason, the lights all just shut out in this room. So, anyway, to form the imperative, the only thing we have to do in the pa'al is to remove the prefix. The vowels stay the same. The order of the letters stay the same. But the prefix is gone. So to use a sample word, if we have the root shin mem resh, which means to keep or to guard, There they are. All right. He will keep. So the second person, I'm sorry, not he will keep, but you will keep if I'm speaking to a man. So that's the second person, masculine, singular, future tense form. And it's just a statement, you will keep, okay? Would look like this. Tav prefix, and then the vowels from our paradigm. So that would be tishmor, and that means you will keep, or you will guard. To make this the imperative, okay, the command form, which is to say guard as an order, or may you guard really doesn't capture the force of this. May it be kind of captures the force of the jussive, but the imperative is really much stronger in force. Shmor. Shmor would mean guard as an order from one person to another. Do this. Okay, not you will do this as in a prophecy, but you better do this. Okay. So tishmor is you will guard, shmor is hey, guard. Okay? And likewise, for the second person feminine singular, masculine plural, and feminine plural, the way to form those imperative forms is to take the future tense form and eliminate the prefix from it. So, hopefully this will be big enough to see. So there's our masculine. Okay, here's our feminine. Again, in the all you have to do is take the second person future tense, remove the prefix from it, keep the same vowels and the same letter order, and you've got your imperative form. Okay, so normally the feminine future tense has a tav in front of it. Okay, just take that tav off, you've got your imperative. And likewise for the masculine plural and feminine plural. All right, so I won't get into all that right now. I want to jump into the translation some. But another thing I want to point out, though, is that there can be a vowel change here. If the third letter, the third radical, is a guttural letter, which means a chet or an ayin, then there will be a vowel change. Instead of using a cholam, a patach will be used. And this is because it's easier to pronounce the patach in front of a guttural letter. It's easier to say ach than och. So basically that's what accounts for that vowel change. But it happens all the time. And again, it's in front of a chet or an ayin that vowel change will occur. They are.
Yeah, they're hiric, and then the stop, and then a hiric, and then the hiric.
Oh, okay.
So I think you got your things backwards.
Yeah, so there's not a cholam in the feminine singular form.
No, but there's a hiric at the beginning and a hiric.
Okay, right. So
it would be shimrei.
yeah, shimri, you're right. My memory is, in fact, yes. That's actually the feminine singular form. Yes. So the vowels can change slightly, okay, but the letter form and the suffix remains the same. And yeah, that does make more sense because it would be awkward to have a cholam there.
Yeah.
But regardless, I'm focusing in on this form rather than going to a complete exegesis on the imperative forms because our very first word of Deuteronomy 6:4 is an imperative. Okay, so it starts, you got it in front of you, Shema Yisrael, Yahweh Eloheinu, Yahweh Echad. Or you'll hear Adonai a lot, I'll talk about that in a moment. So shmang is our first word. This is shmang. The root is shin mem ayin, which means to hear. And so you can identify right away that this is the imperative form of that verb. We've got our first radical, ashva, our second radical, ene patach, and then our third radical here. Our third radical is an ayin, so this is a patach here instead of a cholam, right? Following our rule on gutturals. So this is the imperative form. It's the second person, masculine, singular, future tense imperative form. There's in fact only a future tense imperative. There's not any other tense imperative. So the very first word is hear. It's not you will hear as a prophetic statement, but it's hear as a command statement. Okay, listen is another translation that is frequently used. Because we tend to say that in English more than we do here, at least in modern times. Okay, so this is the command form of to hear. All right, shmang Yisrael. Yisrael is Israel, the nation, and so that's who's being addressed, who's being told to hear. All right, and then we've got the Tetragrammaton, and I'm sure everybody watching is familiar with this already. I've chosen to pronounce it Yahweh just because that is the most common pronunciation. I'm not saying that's the only pronunciation, or even that that's the ancient pronunciation. I'm just using it. I've included no vowels on this. You will find vowels affixed to the Tetragrammaton in various texts. Some texts leave it devoid of vowels. Some texts actually add vowels. The JPS, Jewish Publication Society Tanakh, which is the primary Hebrew translation that I look at, uses these vowels. Right. These vowels do not form Yahweh in any way, shape, or form. However, they are not intended in the JPS to indicate pronunciation of the Tetragrammaton itself. They're in fact included to indicate pronunciation of the word that they use to censor the Tetragrammaton. Okay. In Judaism, it is commonplace to, instead of trying to pronounce the letters Yod, He, Vav, and He, to say Adonai instead. Adonai is another term that's used to refer to God, and it means the Lord, which explains why we have the Lord in all caps in our King James versions. Okay, they're just using the same method of substitution, as the Jews did. And so these are actually, if you included a cholam, and sometimes you'll find a cholam too. Okay, yes, this forms Yehovah, okay, which is many people advocate for being the correct pronunciation. Incidentally, or perhaps not so incidentally, these are also the vowels that are found in Adonai. They are, in fact, because they are not different. I thought they were different at first too, but they're not. Because
the Aleph has the little thing in the top.
Aleph can't have a shva. That's right. Yod cannot have a chatav patach. It has a shva. And the shva changes between these forms depending on what letter it's under and the way the rest of the word is functioning. So these are, in fact, the vowels from Adonai. At first, somebody said that, and I said, no, it's not. But, in fact, they are by substitution. Okay. Now, whether that's by design or these are, in fact, the original vowels of the Tetragrammaton, I don't know. Okay. But that is the explanation commonly given. I'm not going to get into the historical, texts and all that kind of thing because I'm not qualified to really comment on that very much. But I'm not saying it's one way or another. I'm just pointing out the limited things that I do know. So, anyway, that aside, it is the Tetragrammaton, the name of God, and so it appears here in its name form rather than only the Elohim that we find in Genesis 1. Okay. All right. So Shema Yisrael, Yahweh Eloheinu. Okay, so we're all familiar with Elohim, which means God. Eloheinu, if you'll recall from a while back, is in fact Elohim with a possessive pronominal suffix. And it is in fact the plural form. Yes. And it's in the plural form. You might say, well, but I thought Elohim was singular. It is, but it's in a plural form, and so it takes the plural form of the suffix. So this suffix, enu, with the yod, indicates our, in the sense of belonging to us or pertaining to us. Okay, so the term Eloheinu means our God. So here, Israel, Yahweh is our God. Rather than just a statement, Yahweh is God, it's specifying He's our God. Our God as Israelites. Okay? Okay, now the next phrase is Yahweh Echad. Now remember Echad as the numeral 1. And so there's a question, and there are two ways to translate the entire phrase. Okay. Here, Israel is pretty straightforward. Okay. Of course, there are no visible ises in Hebrew. Okay. So, Yahweh Eloheinu, I'm choosing to translate as Yahweh is our God. And then for Yahweh Echad, I'm forming a separate clause, saying Yahweh is our God, comma, Yahweh is one. Right. Now, how you choose to translate Echad, of course, whether it's you say the numeral 1, whether you say alone, I can't think of many other ways to render it. But some people choose to say Yahweh our God is one Yahweh. Okay, so they put the invisible is between the two clauses instead of in the middle of each clause. So I'm saying Yahweh is our God, Yahweh is one, and some choose to translate Yahweh our God is one Yahweh. Personally, I don't feel that translation makes a lot of sense, because though Yahweh is a noun, there's not like a bunch of them. So, it's not an object that you can kind of... The only place that assigns any number to him is here. It assigns the number 1. And so it's not like there's others to choose from, or to say that he is one, I think makes a lot more sense than to say that he's one name. You wouldn't say David is one David or Moses is one Moses or anything, Moshe is one Moshe. You'd say, I guess you could say Moshe is one. It's an odd phrase, it only applies to him in general, okay? But I think it's much more coherent to put the invisible is between those two phrases rather than, or in each phrase rather than between the clauses. Okay, so hear Israel, Yahweh is our God, Yahweh is one. Any commentary, questions about verse 4?
What's interesting is the Shema has an enlarged ayin, and Echad has an enlarged dalet, making the word ed, which is a witness.
Yes, he mentioned, okay, in traditional Hebrew texts that render the Shema, there's a tradition that in Shema, the ayin at the end is written much larger than the other letters in the sentence. And the dalet at the end of Echad is also written much larger than the other letters in the sentence. And you'll see that in most traditional Hebrew texts. It's a scribal tradition that dates back to I don't even know when. It's just how they do it. So there's a few theories as to why that is. One is ayin and dalet together spell aid, which means a witness.
The dalet and ayin also mean knowledge, right?
The reverse, yeah, they form
No.
sort of part of the root of to know. Another idea that I remember reading one time is that they're written that way in order that they never be replaced with the letters that they could be confused with. So ayin and aleph could be confused with each other because ayin is a very subtle sound and aleph is silent.
Dalet and resh.
And dalet and resh could be confused with each other. And if those letters were reversed, okay, shemang, shin, mem, aleph, rather, okay, shin, mem, ayin means here, shin, mem, aleph would mean destroy.
Right. And then achar is like behind or last. Or
Yes, and achar means other.
Yeah.
So that would be rendered Yahweh is another,
Yeah.
which of course is totally contrary to Exodus 20.
Wow.
So,
Destroy Israel. Wow, someone could go somewhere crazy.
yes, and so since this is the intro
It says
to
in the very end.
one of the two great commandments in the Torah, the explanation is they thought it very important to make sure that this does not ever get messed up, so they brought special attention upon those letters. So I don't know, that sounds like something they would do to me. But anyway, you will find that though a very large ayin and a very large dalet. It's a scribal tradition, and maybe a Mosaic tradition. I don't know. Maybe Moses wrote them that way, but we don't have a copy of his Torah scroll, so we don't know. But regardless, you will find that, and it doesn't change the meaning of anything. It's just the way it is. So yes, glad you pointed that out because I'd totally forgotten to mention that.
It was staring me in the face.
Anything else before we move on to verse 5?
Ahavta?
Okay. All right, verse 5. Ahavta.
It's right over there.
It is indeed.
You could have seen the first one.
I could. So again, this is not the verse we're looking at, but we have the exact same form of the exact same word over here, which is ve'ahavta. Yes. Ahav, aleph, hey, bait. First off, we'll, again, just using our standard procedure, we'll break this down. The vav at the beginning, of course, is our prefix and, so we know right away that's not part of the root. And then our tav comments ending here is a very common suffix, right, which indicates the masculine singular, second person specifically. So in the middle, we're left with aleph, hey, bait, which is the root that means to love. All right. Ahav ta, without the vav. This is our second person, masculine, singular, past tense form. So that would mean you have loved, or you loved. The vav at the beginning inverts the past to the future here. So it becomes, and you will love. One of the funny features of the Vav prefix is it inverts the future to past and the past to future. And also, in the theme of continuing the narrative, even though this is not in the imperative form, this is just a dry statement about the future, it's just the future tense form. Since the whole passage started with an imperative, there's kind of this imperative undertone that is implied to all the future tense verbs that follow. So as long as Israel's being addressed, everything is sort of thought of as being in the imperative. So they don't actually have to use the imperative form. If they did, it would really be emphasizing the imperative form. You know, it'd be really, really forceful for them to keep using the imperative over and over and over and over again. But he's already told them in the imperative to listen. Okay. And so, anyway, these future tense forms, or actually inverted past tense forms, as it were, you can think of them as being imperative even though they, on their own, would look like just dry statements about the future. Okay? So you will love kind of becomes you shall love in a command form instead of a prophetic form. Okay, and then ignoring the rest of that because that's not the verse we're looking at. The ahavta, et, our indicator that the next word is the direct object of the sentence. So the you being addressed is Israel, the same as the you that was addressed in verse 4. Et indicates we're about to say what Israel is to love. After et comes Yahweh Elohecha. Okay, so we're familiar with Yahweh. Elohecha. This is, now we've just seen Eloheinu, which meant our God. Elohecha is again Elohim with the...
I just looked at it. That's not a segel.
No, I didn't think it was a segel.
Yeah, in my Bible it's a segel.
Okay, well it's one of these two vowels. It means the same thing regardless. All right, we have some debate as to which vowel this is, but I'm pretty sure that it is in fact...
It's a segel. I'm not blind, it's a segel. It's three dots. It's a three-dot pyramid.
Oh, you're talking about under the hay.
In verse 5, yes.
I thought you were talking about the top.
Okay.
No.
So now that that's cleared up, it would mean the same thing regardless because sometimes these vowels do change. But
Sorry, my finger could...
Elohecha is the second person masculine singular possessive form. So we've changed from our God to your God. Your masculine singular. The masculinity and singularity apply to your. Okay.
Which is interesting because most commandments are in the plural here.
Yes, this is interesting because there's a change in person that's going on.
Whole Shema is singular.
Yes, verse 4, all right, is addressed to Israel, and it calls Yahweh Eloheinu, our God, all right, referring to us as a collective, all right, and it's Moses speaking here. So he's talking to Israel, saying Yahweh is our God, okay, Yahweh is one, and you. And what's interesting is he doesn't say you plural. So even though he's addressing all of Israel, he's not addressing them collectively. He's addressing them individually, saying each of you individually is to do this. Not you as a collective nation are to do this. Not that the collective nation isn't supposed to do this. But the way that this command is addressed is to the individual.
What if it's inferred that it actually goes back to Israel and to his seed that follow?
You might be able to make that argument too. But anyway, when he says your God, though, it's in the singular. So it's applying God to being the God of each individual person in Israel. So that's just an interesting thing. It changes that voice from plural to singular. So that's what Elohecha means. All right, so Yahweh Elohecha, okay, Yahweh your God is the object of you shall love, because it follows the et. All right, Bechal. All right, this is our preposition, chal, which means all, or every, in this case all. And it's preceded by our prefix, beit, which means in or with. So, bechal becomes with all. And this is something you'll see actually very frequently, where a prepositional prefix is prefixed to another preposition. Okay, so with all, in all. All right, this happens quite a bit. Okay, so with all what? Levavcha. And unlike Genesis, this set of verses is replete with these possessive pronominal suffixes. Okay, Genesis has none. But here, and throughout a lot of the Torah, they're everywhere. So you hear these chas and enus and es and os at the end of a great deal of words. Okay, so cha is again the second person masculine singular. Okay. So your. And okay, so what is levav?
Heart.
Levav is heart. Yes.
Unless you're Western, you think it's mind.
Yes. Yes. I'm not going to get into an extended exegesis on heart, although it's very interesting, and I encourage everybody in the world to do a word study on that sometime, because it tells you a whole lot about a lot of things in the scriptures, and it connects a lot of ideas that you wouldn't have thought were connected before. And it's very applicable to your life also. So that is my 2 seconds of theological advice.
Probably why in the New Testament they take it and they add the mind. Someone's like throwing a little bit or something. Yeah.
Right. Yeah, just real briefly, you know, we kind of have a sense of what heart means in English. You know, our culture is uses the term heart to mean our sort of inner self or emotions, or, you know, pretty frequently, and it approximates the sense that it's used in Hebrew. Mind is a good translation, I think. Desire or motivation is another great one. So, but do a word study on that. It's great. But until then, you can kind of generalize it as heart/mind sort of idea. It's your brain, your faculties, your human faculties. Okay, so that's levavcha is your heart. All your heart, okay, not part of it, but all, bechol. So with all your heart. Then we have uvechal, which is the same thing that we've just seen, except we've got our and in front of it all. Okay, so and with all. Now here we have three prepositions conjunction and two prepositions strung together. Okay.
Quick question.
Yes.
Is there a reason it's a u instead of a va? I mean, does the vowel change only occur with this particular word, or is it other?
It depends on what follows. The usual way to mark the vav is with a shva.
That would be vavachal.
Right. But yeah, a lot of times when two shvas are going to be the beginning of a word, the first one changes to a chirik. I'm trying to recall exactly the rules for when the vav takes the shuruk at the beginning, but I know I see it happen a lot before baits and a lot before mems. And I don't know if that's the hard and fast rule, but that's what I've noticed. So I need to look at my notes to be totally sure. But you will find that. So this vav can take any number of vowels actually at the beginning, no less than 4, probably more. So, but yes, it means and in any case. Okay, so ve'ahavta et Yahweh Elohecha b'chol levavcha, with all your heart, uv'chol, and with all nafshecha. All right, nafshecha. Okay, again, we can separate off the suffix right away. All right, that's our indicator of who owns this. Okay, this comes from nefesh, and nefesh is usually translated soul. That's another word I highly recommend doing a word study on, because it will bring to light a number of features about this. Sometimes nefesh is translated life. Sometimes it means a body. Sometimes it means an animal. Okay. So do a word study on it. It's used in conjunction with your heart very frequently, and an extremely loose translation would be mind and body. Extremely loose would be that. So
notice it's focusing on 3 parts that are all associated with flesh.
But yes, if you look at what the nefesh does, all right, in a word study, it eats a lot and it wants to eat. Okay. It does. If you look it up, and then it's associated with eating all the time, and so nefesh kind of indicates your physical desires. So the idea is, again, mind and body would be a really loose idea, but love him with your mind, love him with your body. It's deeper than that, and that's not a totally honest translation, but that's just a generalization to kind of give a general theme to the word. Okay, so heart and soul is fine as long as you understand what heart and soul mean. Heart, we kind of have a pretty good idea of an English soul. I do not believe we do, because a lot of times people think of soul as being something sort of invisible or mysterious, and in Hebrew, nefesh is not invisible and mysterious. Okay. Right. It's much more grounded in physicality than we think of the term soul being. So, so soul was probably an adequate translation back when it was first done, but because of the connotations that soul has in English now, it doesn't really convey the idea of this word to its fullest, I don't think, anymore. So, but again, a word study on that, see how it's used in the rest of the scriptures, does a lot of good toward interpreting this verse and pretty much every other verse in the Bible, as long as they use words that are commonly used in other places. It's when you've got verses that have words that are only used in that verse, or maybe 2 other times in the entirety of the Old Testament, that you start to run into problems with contextual interpretation, and you have to go a little deeper to try to come up with something reasonable to translate things as. But heart and soul, the Bible is replete with references to the levav and the nefesh, so you have a whole lot of great context to go on for interpreting what they mean in this verse. So rather than go into an in-depth teaching on that, I just encourage you to look those up, and my really condensed version would be mind for heart and body for soul. All right, so with all your levav, with all your nefesh, and we have another uvechal, which means and with all, once again. Me'odecha. Now this is the most difficult word in the passage to translate, by far. Okay, we can separate out the cha at the end once again, so this is something that belongs to you. Translation of this is very difficult. Strength, okay, or might is often used, but when you look up contextually where this word is used elsewhere, it becomes very difficult to figure out what it's talking about. Me'od, on its own, is usually not a noun. Usually me'od is an adverb, and it's used in the sense of very. Okay, it kind of intensifies the word that it comes after. So it's very strange to find it here, used as a noun with a pronominal suffix on it. So it's really hard to
like your utmost?
see. Yeah, I mean, that's the sense I've always thought of it in, is like, okay, your body, your mind, and everything you've got, you know, just as, you know, as far as you can reach, as far as you can go, you know, as intense as it can get. That's kind of the idea. I still would really like to define it as a noun, you know, in some way.
You tell me that the first part of the word means very, and then it's the your on the end of it. That's the composition of the word?
It seems that way, yeah. You're very. You're very. Yeah, it is.
Do it or something like that.
Yeah, so it's
emphasizing everything that was just said, and it's making it your emphasized.
yeah. Whatever the case, you don't see this in many other places in the scripture. In fact, I can't think of any offhand. Not saying there are none, but it's really weird to see me'od as a noun. It just is. Definitely, what can be drawn from this is that since it usually intensifies what it comes after, it's a strong, you know, it's strengthening the statement, and I'd love to have a noun form of it to tack a definition onto, but you know, so I kind of default to might or strength just because I don't know what else to do with it. There may be some scholars who have some more insight on that, although the few things I have read on it, people are just as puzzled as I am. So, but yes, the idea of intensity or of variness, for lack of a better term, are definitely here with this word.
Maybe people used to know how to be very in the past.
Yes, perhaps we have lost the art of being very. So,
Lost my motivation.
but anyway, so this one's kind of a mystery, and defaulting to might seems great because might is kind of an intense, you know, dig deep kind of idea. So, but anyway, so unfortunately I leave that one with a bit of a question mark on it. But the gist of the verse, though, now that we've, this is the end of verse 5, the gist of the whole thing is, even though you can tag specific definitions onto the words, and again, I encourage you to do word studies on those words. It's a great study. It's a long study, but it's a good one. Even though you can tack on specific definitions, the sense of the verse, the whole, you know, the verse as a whole, is not to be, you know, you don't want to miss the forest for the trees. So you can look at these specific things, but the gist of the verse is the gist of the command is to love God with everything you have, with everything you are. Okay, and so you can dig into the particulars, but you know, all these alls and then this variness here, it's kind of like, look, just because we're saying these few things doesn't mean we're excluding everything else. Okay, it's kind of meant to encapsulate, the sense of the verse is kind of meant to encapsulate everything. So, so keep that in mind when you're translating pretty much everything, that there is a sense that, you know, that the whole story is to be taken in, and there is an idea, you know, a theme that it's usually identifiable, you know, that the whole thing is kind of pointing toward. And if you lose sight of that, you're going to kind of lose your way going through the particulars of the verse. And it can create some issues in translation, too. That's one thing that, in my opinion, separates good translations from bad ones. or superior translations from inferior ones, because most translations are good faith efforts. But is, and it's really difficult to do, but is kind of the flow of what, the story or the command or whatever, whatever text is kind of that flow and theme and feel being preserved in the translation. So do you wind up at the end of it with the same kind of ideas going through your head as you would if you read it in the original? And so it's a difficult balancing act to put that into English, especially since our culture is so far removed from Hebrew culture. Yes, it is difficult me'od. Very difficult. Okay, so any other commentary about, or questions about verse 5? All right, well, on to verse 6. Okay, v'hadvarim. That is verse 6, right?
Yeah. Well, not. You
Did
missed
I
a word.
did I miss a word?
Yeah, it's the haya.
Oh, I'm sorry. I totally missed a word.
The hayu hadvarim.
Thank you. That didn't look right to me, but I'm just going off memory here, so I know 4 and 5 pretty well. But okay, v'hayu.
These words.
Okay, so again, we can separate off the vav at the beginning. Hayu is a conjugation of haya, okay, which means to be. All right, hayu is the third person past tense plural. And actually, I think I have a sheet on that. You can refer to on the conjugation of haya. But hayu would mean they were. They were. Adding the vav at the beginning inverts it, so it becomes and they will be.
Words they will be.
Okay. Now, how do we know what will be? Well, so far everything we've talked about has been in the singular, and aside from the giant letter, or rather number 6 at the beginning of this verse, how you know what the subject of this is you look for your next plural word. Okay? So what will be? Yes, hadvarim. And actually I'll put the whole phrase up here because it belongs together. Hadvarim ha'eleh. Okay, so breaking this down, davar is a word. Okay, davarim is words. Hadvarim means the words, with our hey prefix being the definite article. Okay, so what will be? The words will be, but not just the words, hadvarim ha'eleh. Yes, ele is, if you remember, ze is this, and zot is also this. Ele is these. Okay, so plural of this. Okay, so what will be? These words will be. Okay, so v'hayu hadvarim ha'ele. All. They will be upon. Levavcha.
You missed several words.
I did again?
Yeah, because it's out of order. It actually says the words, these which I
Oh yes, which I command you.
to stay
All right, I should not go off memory anymore.
Yeah, because the English is
Please
out
forgive
of
me.
order with the Hebrew. They're inferring that
Okay, these words, asher, that or which, depending on how much of a grammar stickler you are. Asher anochi, that I. Okay. Yes. Mitzavcha. Now, this is an odd word. And the reason it's odd is because it's going over something that I have not talked about in grammar yet. Okay, first off, this is a verb.
Right. And you're adding a
And we've got a cha at the end.
instead of another verbal ending.
And so this is not the possessive pronominal suffix, but it is a pronominal suffix. Verbs can, in fact, take pronominal suffixes, and what those suffixes do is they indicate the object of the verb. And so in the future I may have a list of all those put together, but for now just know that that is, and this is still the second person masculine singular. Okay, so the object of this verb is you, the one being spoken to. Okay? This here is the root of this is actually tzadi vav he. And this is the origin of the word mitzvah. Okay, the root of the word mitzvah, which means a commandment. And this root means to command. Right? And it's an ayin vav and also a lamed he conjugation combined, so it does some funny things. This is actually what this is the present participle in the PL. And I may run out of time before I get totally through with this, but we'll pick it up if need be next week. But so this is the present participle in the PL. What does that mean? Okay, it's the present tense. This is being used in the present tense form. It's PL, so it's intensified. Okay, binyan PL is intensified, so it's got the mem prefix at the beginning that we see in the present participle in the PL. That's a fun alliteration. The he at the end of the root has dropped off because of the specific conjugation. This vav actually doesn't have a shuruk in it, it has a dagish, because the second radical of the PL takes a dagish. So this is a case, they are rare, but they do exist, where a vav actually takes a dagish and it's not a vowel symbol. Okay, so mitzav cha, what does that all mean? Am commanding you. I is the subject. The verb is to command. So present tense, I am commanding. The object is given at the end. So it's you, masculine singular. So these words I command you today will be on your heart. Yes, so these words that I am commanding you. All right, and now that my confidence is shot, I need to look at this. Hayom, I thought so. Yes. Hayom is an expression. Literally, it means the day. Yom is day, and ha is the definite article. But this is an idiomatic expression that means today. It doesn't mean the day, like, just shouldn't be translated the day, it should be translated today. So, okay, so these words, Hadvarim ha'ele, that I command you today, going back to the hayu at the very beginning, they will be al levavcha, all is upon, And Levavcha, we've already talked about, means on your heart. And I think actually that's the end of verse 6, isn't it? Okay, good. All right, so any further commentary or questions on verse 6? Or on the entire thing? Okay.
I was going to say that the today,
Mhm.
just telling Jonathan, it seems that, does that carry some sort of authority, like say like a courtroom? It seems like Yeshua uses that a lot, like today.
Oh, okay.
Tell you know what I mean? Does that carry some weight there?
It does provide emphasis to what's being spoken of, because it's kind of saying, Hebrew's replete with, the Hebrew text is replete with references to itself. And so like the term hine is used a lot, which means behold. It's another way of saying listen.
Oh, here I am.
Yeah, hineni means here I am, but it's a way, it's hine really means pay attention. You know, what I'm about to tell you is important, so listen up. Hine. And hayom is another thing. What I'm telling you today, as in, you know, it's just re-emphasizing that what I'm saying right now you need to listen to. This is important. You'll need to remember this day. And so yeah, and it is true. Yeshua uses that phrase a lot. And the prophets use behold a lot. You know, it's a way of really drawing attention and there's a word I'm looking for, but I'm not coming up with it. But it just adds a lot of flair and emphasis. But I want to say something like bombast, but that kind of sounds like that sounds like it's over the top. But it's not. It's just it really makes an effort to get your attention. So yeah, in the English translation, all the beholds you see and all that kind of stuff, you know, in the Hebrew, it's all geared to direct your attention to things. And so yeah, I mean, it's really appropriate for all those things to be there in Deuteronomy 6 because, well, you know, they really want you to pay attention to Deuteronomy 6. So, but yeah, no, that's a good comment. Yeah, the Hayom is pretty much there for emphasis. Like what I'm telling you today, this is what you need to remember. So, all right. Well, we didn't get to this, and so we'll save that for next week. So that's a little preview on next week. It'll be Deuteronomy 11. That'll be one of the things, because we'll get through that actually pretty fast. So, with no further ado, shalom everybody, and we'll see you next time.